I mean, I love coming out here and I love talking to the people because, you know, we need to remember it's you guys that actually put us in work. You know, it's you guys sat in the stands that give us the opportunity to go out there and have fun. So we have to remember, you know, really who we answer to.
Now, speaking of that article though, great article by the way. I mean, how cool is it? I mean, the whole idea is that the 3 new engines coming out in 2012 that you could actually differentiate just from the sound.
Yeah, no, that's the one thing that's been missing over these last 6 years of sole supply is, you know, not only the competition element, but the element of diversity. And, you know, I've not heard the Chevy engine run yet, but apparently some people have. It shook down at Putnam Park earlier in the week, and it sounds very different to ours. So, you know, Tony Cotman, who's the guy that's managing the whole of the program, said, you know, you can have your back to the racetrack and you know that's a Honda or you know that's a Chevy coming. So that's really cool, you know, and what it shows is different approaches in engineering and a different way of doing things. So that's the excitement of competition.
Well, yeah, and you're right. It's just going to be really cool to hear just different sounds. I mean, but we really like the sound of the Honda engines.
Yeah, but it's time for something to sound a little different. You know, we've been listening to V8 normally aspirated engines for a long time, and we've been listening to Honda since 2003. And, you know, I personally was very glad that when we introduced the silencers on them a few years ago, because standing in the pit lane at Indianapolis and hearing the sound, you know, ricocheting off all those metal grandstands and not being able to talk to the person next to you was a bit too loud. But, you know, the turbo engine, it's a really different sound. We're running a lot higher. We're running 12,000 RPM instead of just over 10,000. So it's got that characteristic turbo whistle to it. And, you know, the way Honda's done its exhaust system, it's very different. So, you know, even at idle at 3,000 RPM, it sounds like it's running 5,000 RPM. So it's pretty different. But it actually at idle, it's a little bit quieter. But then as the revs come up, the noise builds, and I think what you're going to hear over the coming months as the power level comes up, they're just going to get louder, louder, and louder.
Now, speaking of things getting louder, as we get closer, I know the engines aren't there just yet, according to this article. What are your guys' next steps and get these babies ready? I think it was January. Is that kind of the time?
Yeah, I mean, well, the big next step is Tuesday, and both GM and Honda a couple of weeks ago took delivery of the world's biggest Airfix kit to build our own racing cars. So those have been built in Indianapolis. We fired ours up on, oh, I forget what night it was. What day is it? It's Saturday, I think. We fired ours up Thursday night around about 10 p.m. and hopefully the residents of Speedway and Indiana appreciated that, because if we were in a residential area. But we fired up, and then both GM and Honda will be over at Mid-Ohio on Tuesday and Wednesday testing for the very first time our own cars, as opposed to testing the series car, which we've been doing up until now. And then what you will see is a really accelerated pace of development, particularly on the engine side, and you know, all the way through to that first race we're going to be pushing as hard as we can.
And that's, I know in the article you mentioned the dyno. Like, can you explain to me and the fans what the dyno is? Because you were talking about how it's different in the dyno than when actually on the track.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, actually running on a racetrack here like Kentucky or any of the other big ovals, it's a bit like running on a dyno. A dyno is a machine in a room that actually you're able to run an engine on it and put load onto it, and you have instrumentation all over the engine, and you can really very closely monitor what's happening to the engine. And that's where we first run all our new developments, and you know, we'll have a team of engineers watching that engine, which is just 10 feet away between a very thick piece of glass and a very thick test cell door. And you know, we can run both what we refer to as a steady state power curve, where you'll fire the engine up on the dyno, warm it up, and then you'll run it up in maybe 400 RPM increments and let the engine settle at each of those speeds, take a power reading and any other data that you want, and then ramp it to the next speed, all the way up to 12,000 plus RPM. And then what we can do as well is, and it's not so cool on an oval, but on a road course, we could simulate that car driving round Mid-Ohio, driving around Sebring with all the gear shifts, everything. So it literally sounds like you shut your eyes and you think you're at the racetrack. So just to give you an example, and it unfortunately wasn't with IndyCar, but the other program we run, our sports car series, prior to going to Le Mans in 2010, we ran 24 hours on the dyno with the car gearbox and simulated the entire 24 hours of Le Mans with our race engine just to prove it all out. So that's how we use the dyno.
Now, did you stay up for that whole 24 hours?
No. I don't even do that when I'm actually at Le Mans either, so you'll find me in the back of the motorhome.
Maybe when we're in Vegas.
Yeah, perhaps. But my wife says I've got to behave.
You're a good husband. Well, Roger, it's not going to get to 83 degrees here, but things are definitely heating up here in the fan village. I want you guys to give it up one more time from Honda Performance Development. Get up for Roger Griffiths.
Thank you, and enjoy the race tomorrow.